Thanks for having me, everybody. I was just reflecting and being on with Mark and Jet as we were getting ready, you know, to go live. Just how amazing it is that what a Herculean task for Mark and friends and IJS to be offering this daily. I almost feel like I can rest into something. I don't get to be part of this daily sit as often as I would like, but just knowing that it's happening, even when I'm not there, there's a beautiful sense of bitachon or trust that I feel. So I'm grateful for this space and for each of you and for our shared practice. So I want to, as we go into our silence today, I want to. I've long been interested in this concept related to where we are right now in our Torah reading in Exodus. This concept of that the Zohar talks about of speech itself being in exile. The Zohar says it's not just the Jewish people who are in exile, but somehow dibur, speech itself, is enslaved or in exile. And I've always been kind of mystified by that, not quite understanding it, but sort of poetically moved by that idea. And Chassidut also brings a lot of teaching about it. But I've been just sitting with, what does that mean exactly, or what could it mean? So I have a longtime chavruta who some of you no doubt have learned with or know, Rabbi Benjamin Barnett. And recently we've been reading the kind of classic Musar text. I had never read it before, but from the 11th century, Duties of the Heart by Bahya ibn Pekuda. And we studied something this week, just a couple of days ago, that didn't explicitly talk about this concept of speech being in exile, but made me return to it. And I thought, okay, maybe I'm getting something about what this could mean. So what Bahya says is, he asks the question, what does the wholehearted acceptance of the unity of all life look like? What is the wholehearted acceptance of achdut, of oneness? Like, how do we know when we've wholeheartedly accepted that? How do we know when we've really integrated that knowing? And so he answers his own question, as rabbis often do, by saying, "Sheyihiyu halev vehalashon shavim biyechud," when the heart and the tongue are in accord. When the heart and the tongue are in alignment, that's how we know that we've integrated our knowing about the oneness of all life. So what does that mean exactly? Right? I think in studying it, it came to me, I think the tongue and the heart being in accord could point at that state of being where there is no gap between knowing and acting, right? Which is something that Musar obviously addresses a lot as a practice of, trying to walk the walk, Jewish ethics. So when the tongue and the heart are in accord, there's no gap, or maybe less gap, between knowing and acting. And of course, our main acting is our speech practice, maybe we never really can say we actually know something until it has been absorbed into our way of acting, into our speech in an easeful way. And we have a disconnect often, probably all of us, between the heart and the tongue. For many of us, speech specifically, as helpful as it sometimes is, can be frustrating when we find ourselves speaking about something rather than from that place or as that place. Like when we might be teaching a really profound or speaking about, a really profound piece of Torah, but we're not inhabiting it, and it's a terrible feeling, right? It's a bad feeling, very natural, understandable, and common. But just personally, I really, the feeling of giving a bit of Torah over that on paper is a deep bit of Torah, but I'm giving it over in a heady way, I'm not, it's a teaching about the heart, but I'm not in my heart at all as I'm teaching it. So it's, again, common and hard, not sustainable. So Bachya describes this struggle. He talks about exactly that, about how the frustration around the head and the tongue and the heart not being in accord. He says sometimes we notice that just our tongue is speaking about achdut, about oneness, but the rest of us haven't caught up with that yet. It's aspirational, maybe, or maybe we've heard, Bachya writes, maybe we've heard our ancestors or our teachers speak about oneness, about unity, the unity of all life, but we haven't personally tasted that. We haven't dissolved into that knowing experientially. We might know it intellectually, might be the language that we use. Or, and this is probably the most common of all, in terms, we could even say this is sort of the human condition, when we have had experiences of the tongue and the heart being in accord, in oneness, but it has been fleeting. It hasn't lasted or been integrated. So there's a longing, right? I mean, there's a longing for our speech to flow naturally, without affect. There's a longing for us just in our being as we go about our day, that our very presence attests to oneness, right? Not in what we are literally saying necessarily, not in the content of what we're saying, but in our presence itself. And for me, I think, the times with grace where I'm able to drop into, and I've already named my frustration, my experience of not being able to be in accord in that way as often as I would like. But my experience is when there is even a taste of that accord between the tongue and the heart, I'm not efforting in the same way. I'm not trying in the same way. The person, the small self isn't as kind of clingy in the same way, or needing to assert itself, right? There's more of just an easefulness. So in sitting, right, in this practice, we can't just stubbornly sit down and say the heart and the tongue are going to be in accord. Damn it, right? Like that's going to happen. I'm going to sit until that happens. We could do that. We can't sit and say, I'm going to sit until, by sheer force of will, there's less of a gap between my knowing and my acting, but what sort of miraculously happens in small but really, really noticeable ways, right? Like, so just to speak from my own personal experience, when I'm in a place where I'm not feeling that present, right? When the heart and the tongue are definitely not in accord, when there is a decided absence of flow, and I just start naming it, as we say all the time, just start naming all of the things that seems like they're standing in the way of that flow and that flow and that alignment. Anxiety, a little trembling, distraction, hunger, sadness, regret, it paradoxically, just in not keeping that at bay, right? As we know from our experience with this practice, it slowly brings me more into presence, more into, I think, truly an integrated achdut, an integrated oneness, because there's no other emotion to keep at bay. There's nothing getting in the way of our practice. This is just our practice. And then that's oneness in practice. Maybe it's less, it's less of a lightning bolt often, but just saying yes to what's arising. There's no more duality of thinking, or at least the duality of thinking is softened a bit. Because it's just an idea for the tongue and the heart to be in alignment, to be in accord, right? That's just an idea. It's a beautiful idea. But when we sit into our felt experience without editing ourselves in the same way or resisting in the same way, sort of we paradoxically kind of soften towards that possibility. And the last thing I want to say before we go into our silence together is there's a Musar angle, since we began by mentioning Musar, I think that can help with this as well. My father, maybe 20 years ago, when I was beginning as a pulpit rabbi, and I was sort of trying to think of something to say for a Devar Torah, he said, well, what about just saying something loving? And I said, Dad, it's got to be clever, I can't just, that sounds so, I felt like he didn't get it at the time, but that's been my practice. I've been working with his brilliant suggestion for 20 years, and this is what I think connects it to our topic this morning. If my speech is grounded in my love for the person or the people that I'm speaking with, the person or the people that I'm listening to, then I'm connected to the root of it. And the speech will be truer because it flows from that real-time intention. When I'm in touch with my love of the actual people that I'm in communication with, the speech will naturally be more situated in oneness. The medium has no choice but to become the message, I think, in that respect. And as we often say, as Sylvia Boorstein and others have said, they're really, when we get further into it, there's no distinction between the Musar and the mindfulness practices, right? There's no distinction between loving kindness and, mindfulness meditation. It's the same cushion, that we're sitting on. So I want to invite us to sit now. We'll take about 12 minutes or so in silence. So we begin to come out of the silence. It's a bit like the end of Shabbat, where there's some sweet reluctance, to say goodbye to Shabbat. But like Shabbat, we bring the silence with us into our day. It's the ground of our being. We couldn't not bring it with us. So in that spirit, may a deep and abiding and full-hearted knowing, an embodied knowing of our oneness animate our lives and inform every encounter and experience that we have as we go forth into our day.
Thank you so much, Joshua. That was just a beautiful, beautiful practice and shared Shabbat together. Friends, we seal it with the opportunity for those of you who are in mourning or observing a yard site, or if it's your custom to join in the Kaddish, to do so. For those who are not reciting Kaddish, just to stay present and offer that the loving kindness of the heart for those who are supportive, compassionate support for those in mourning. Thanks to Jet for sharing the words of the Kaddish on the screen. For those who are reciting it, you also can put the name or names of those you're honoring today in the chat box, either now or after we recite Kaddish. And if you are doing so, I invite you to join me by rising now in body or in spirit. And you can unmute your microphone at this time if you would like. Yitgadal, Kadash, Shemei
Kadash
Rabba,
Shmei Rabba Bialma
Dibras,
Dikute
Dikute,
Tiamichma
Dikute,
Ute
Tayechon,
Vayechon Yomechon
Tayechon,
Taye Kol Beit Yisrael
Agala,
Agala Ubizman Kariv Ramein
Behesh,
Shmei Rabba Nevara Lamol Mealmaya Vishtabach Vipa'ar Vikmo Vitnase Hadar Vitaled
Amal,
Halal Shmei
Shmei,
Dekudesh
Kudsha, Echod,
La'ila Min
Ela,
Birkota B'Shirata Tushbata Lemata Damiran Tiala Viramin
Amiran, Ba'ama,
Shlama Imalena
Yekesh,
Ve'oko Yisrael
Lamahal,
Viramin
Maya,
Ase Shalom
Ayin,
Bimama
Malin,
Huya Ase
Ba'alko
Shalom
Yisrael,
Malenu Ve'oko Yisrael Viramin
Shalom, Shalom, Malinu, Ba'alko Yisrael, Yoshvei, Amen.
Amen. Malenu Ve'oko Yisrael. Shalom.
And friends, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to thank our teacher for today, Rabbi Joshua Boettiger, who, as I mentioned at the outset, is the Jewish chaplain at Bard College and now Rosh Yeshiva at the Center for Contemporary Musar. And looking forward to some conversation about that really exquisite teaching and practice that we were blessed with today. And in a moment, for those of you who are leaving us, just a reminder, hope you'll join us tomorrow. We'll sit into Shabbat together. We have these daily little Shabbatot that we are blessed with, and always sweet, especially sweet on Friday, to have that as a way to kind of set our inner Shabbat table to prepare for Shabbat together. So we hope we'll see you tomorrow to practice with Rebecca Schisler, who'll be leading our practice. And I want to thank Jet Bachman, who is filling in for Kat Esposito, who's on vacation, and for holding our space and the tech aspect of it with so much grace and skill today. And Jet, we're grateful to you for your help today. So if you are staying on and would like to present a question or to share a reflection on the practice today, you're welcome to do so in the chat. I will keep an eye on it. If it's a question, please preface it with question in all caps when you put it in the chat. And hopefully I'll be able to keep an eye on that. Well, that was just great, Joshua, and so much to talk about here, my friend. And also, you probably weren't on yesterday, but we had a really beautiful practice yesterday with Cantor Care with Spencer Shapiro, a kind of somatic practice where she was inviting us to notice the connection of the whole channel from the belly up through the tongue. In fact, a lot of it was awareness of the tongue. So like when you started with the exile of speech and the disconnect between the speech and the heart, I thought, wow, this is the perfect segue from that teaching yesterday. So, the universe works in wondrous ways. So thank you for that. She also let us, as we were doing it, there was a focus on the letter tsadi and saying t, t, t. So there was a little bit of a connection between speech, making sound, and awareness of our inner life. So you really brought it to the next level by connecting it with the heart today. So my question is, you really were talking about this alignment or kind of bringing the heart, our essential being, flush with our actions. So that I guess our outer really reflects our essential inner life. And then you described all the different things that get in the way, right? It all sounds good, right? Sounds really good. Sounds simple, and yet so challenging because of all the things that get in the way. So that's the part I really am interested in hearing you elaborate on a little bit. You were naming them, hunger, distraction. I don't remember exactly. Maybe you can call back up some of the words, but here's the thing. So in order to have those moments when we experience ourselves as really, authentic and kind of connected to the heart in that way, how do we notice the things that are getting in the way, whatever it is, less like being triggered or irritated or, what's the prescription in those moments, or even just in the meditation when, I want to be present and, I'm struggling to stay present here. I think I heard your prescription, but I wanted to see if you would say a little bit about.
I mean, I think that's like the genius of this like spiritual technology or whatever we call it of like, of mindfulness practice or the different ways we name like, like Rumi's The Guest House, like greeting everything that comes, right? It's just like, so, and then what always gets flipped that within that intention, I mean, if we stay with it, I mean, even if it's subtle, is like those things that seem like an obstacle to the practice. This is what's keeping me from being, having my heart and my tongue in alignment. This is what I have to like get through. It's like this kind of Western linear of thinking in terms of like, that we bring, and then we sort of pull the carpet out from under that by making that the practice. And it's sort of in accepting that, if I name my longing, I have this longing for my heart and my tongue to be more in accord. There's some pain around that. And I feel this anxiety, feel a little nervous about getting ready to teach. And that's getting in the way of my head and my heart and my tongue being in accord, just like naming it. And then there's a compassion, hopefully, as we do that naming that we get better at, that then we're actually, that's more like, then we're actually in a place more of achdut, because we're not dualizing certain thoughts. Or so I think that it seems so obvious, like to like always come back to that same thing, but like that's the forgetting and the remembering that of different ways of naming in the mindfulness work. But yeah.
Well, I guess, in the stream of Judaism in which we're swimming, that sounds like, of course, that's how we meet it. But I think, of course, even many of us, myself included, didn't grow up necessarily in that stream. And actually, the voice of judgment, right, of trying harder, of, don't just, of discipline yourself, just do it, is understood as prevalent. So for many of us, maybe yourself included, I don't know, it's like it has involved some unlearning. You mentioned Sylvia Boorstein, and she has that beautiful catchphrase of hers, may I meet this moment fully, may I meet it as a friend. And you were just kind of describing like not banishing or otherizing or dualizing, creating a duality that distances ourselves from aspects of ourselves that we're not happy about or proud of or pleasant, and bringing it all into the light of, with compassion, that's really the key ingredient here. So thanks for lifting that up. And I guess, you were describing it as paradoxical. It seems like we'd want to like say, no, go over there, right?
Yeah, well, it's profoundly countercultural. I mean, I'm
Right.
with you. I didn't grow up with that, in that, I don't know. And even if I had, I think I would still be struggling with it. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. We all wish it were easier, but it does
Yeah.
but as you said, I mean, I think there's incremental progress, right?
Yeah.
Every day here, for people who are here, whether you're here regularly or not, it's an opportunity for half an hour just to practice that, just to notice that kind of judgment or shame or guilt or whatever that is kicked up by not being true to our intentions and alignment, and saying, oh, what would it be like if I could forgive myself and accept that part of myself?
Yeah.
And even actually, like like see it as a good thing rather than just like something to tolerate or accept. It's actually right? It's a guidepost to getting to the place where we'd like to be. I also want to thank you for that anecdote with your dad. That was just what a fantastic story. I love that.
Well, I think we get, and not just like, I mean, a lot of us are teachers or in different disciplines, but not just in the Jewish world, but I think we've gotten too good at speaking in a way. And Judaism prizes speaking so much as our, kind of particular, culture and tradition. And I think of like, Aviva Zornberg has some wonderful teachings around like, how do we get ourselves back to that place of lo yachol, like of not being able, like of not needing to be as sharp, or not needing to, like, being comfortable with this sense of this kind of, she connects it back to our pre-verbal self, which is uncomfortable because we want to say and we can't quite say, or we can't quite express. But I love that idea of just being more comfortable with not being able, and not trying so hard to say the right thing, and sort of trusting, I guess, if there is work to be done, it's like, it's just like practice, that we're more, we have more love for the people around us, and, or, as even in challenging situations, and more forgiveness of ourselves. And we kind of trust that presence will come through in whatever we say.
Mm-hmm.
But we put such emphasis on the literality of what we say. Did I get the words right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that not being able, not knowing, it's not comfortable, right? Learning to acclimate ourselves to that. Thank you. Actually, you hadn't heard that Aviva Zornberg piece. So I was thinking about, I was struck by your sharing about like what it's like to give over some Torah, to do some teaching, when you're aware that it's not, there isn't that unity or that connection. That's not coming from the heart, coming from the head. And just to generalize from that, what I took, I just want to try to articulate it. It's like we go through the day and we have interactions with people, and we know or don't know that, we're being authentic, or that, we're really expressing ourselves or acting in accord with what we sense is our higher self. And so the question there for you is, it's a big one with 3 minutes to go here, but we'll have to carry it over, is that GPS system that we have that says, off course, recalculating, or, Rabbi Boettiger, coming from your head, not your heart,
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of that? Do you have a sense that that's implanted in all of us? That sense of, off course, recalculating route here.
Yeah. Well,
We all have that. We pay attention to that voice, right?
yeah. I like that, Mark. I mean, that's a great aspect of the technology that we've been given, is that metaphor. And maybe we could I think the rabbis say like that there's an echo from the time of creation saying like do teshuva,
Right.
that like it's that same thing, like recalculating, like that voice becomes a holy voice, especially if we hold it loosely and laugh with ourselves, like not like, oh man, I messed that up, I was speaking from my head and not my heart, and make a whole story about it. But that's why I like that metaphor that you raised, because it's like, no, just recalculating. And we can even say to the person that we're talking to, my wife has taught me this, like, can we try this again? Can I like go back like a couple minutes and try it again? I think people are relieved, like not just our intimate others, but I think when we're able to like hear that voice and immediately just gently try to listen to it, I think we're all relieved, because it's tough being a human being.
Yeah, it is tough being a human being. There's a lot of lovely comments, but also really good questions in the chat. I want to apologize for not getting to many of these questions, but maybe we can end with this one really quickly. There's a good question from Ricky, that is this the way we sometimes ask God to meet us, with simple kindness and acceptance? If so, how's that expressed in liturgy? I would, my sense is, it's all over the place, we just don't see it. But I'm wondering how you would answer that question. Like, is there any part in Jewish prayer where you experience, what you just said actually is, it's expressed in the liturgy during the high holidays a lot, of course.
Yeah. I was just thinking of, it's a great question, and I'm going to, I hope it's okay, Mark, can I just
Sure.
I put my email in so that
Yes.
I see a lot of questions, and I want to just because there's not time, but I do want to speak to that last question. Did I do that right? That if anyone wants to continue the conversation, I'm thinking of Adonai Sifatai Tiftach Ufi Yagi Tehilatecha, like the Kavanah that we say sometimes before the Amidah, like, God, open my lips that my mouth might declare your glory. So whether we're, deistically or not, it's like, I'm opening my mouth, like, do it for me somehow. Like, let what comes through be a testimony to you, to oneness,
Yeah, that's, the thing that came up for me was, I think there are lots. As Avinu Malkeinu, the refrain, Aseh Imanu Tzedakah V'Chesed, we're just human, right?
Right.
Be with us with chesed, or you can even, it could be a prayer. It could just be thanks for the chesed and helping us come back, so much with tshuva. All right, we're at time, a little bit over, but this is a big treat, Joshua. Thank you so much.
Smart. Good to see you.
Making time and sharing this with us. It was really, really exquisite today. Appreciate it. And of course, thanks to Jet and to all of you for being here. And we hope to see you tomorrow to sit into Shabbat together with Rebecca Schisler. So many blessings, everyone. Be safe and well.